In our lesson tonight, we will show or attempt to show how a coming Israelite ruler will deceive Israelites to worship the Assyrian Antichrist, Mauzim, for protection in a war against Egypt, which is now drawing closer as the Israelis killed an Egyptian soldier recently in a border skirmish at Gaza. Our Torah lesson is entitled Israel Honors Assyrian Mauzim Deity Against Egypt. Israel honors Assyrian Mauzim Deity against Egypt. Our meditation scriptures are Daniel chapter 11, verses 36 through 39, which state, "And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself, magnify himself above every God, and shall speak marvelous things against the Elohim, the Elohim of Elohim, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the Elohim of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any Elohim, for he shall magnify himself above all. But in his estate shall he honor Allah Mauzim, Allah of forces, and Elohim, whom his fathers knew not, shall he honor with gold and silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strong Elohim, with a strange Elohim, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. And at the time of the end, shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. Selah. Hallelujah. Shalom, shalom, Zake, Kelly. So tonight, we must be aware of something. We must be aware that there is a hidden coalition who appear as Muslim, but are really followers of Nimrod Maitreya, whose spirit is called Allah Mauzim in this passage we just read in the book of Daniel, chapter 11. Bringing this lesson close to home and how this affects us in this immediate captivity in America. Let me share something with you for a moment. When the Nation of Islam emerged, its early leaders, as Farad Muhammad and Elijah Muhammad, as well as Moorish Science Temple leader Noble Drew Ali, were all under the mystical influence of the teachings of the Ahmadiyya Muslim sect from what is today Pakistan. I'm going to share something with you of a quote that was from Wikipedia. Sometimes people don't give much clout to Wikipedia as a resource, but it does give you sources to verify what it says. So there's some credibility with that. But Wikipedia has a comment about the Ahmadiyas. There's a source they cite from an author named Carl Evans in his book entitled The Messenger. It postulates that Farad was the son of a Pakistani Muslim. And that time, Pakistan was known as East India. Now, Evans bases a position on certain indications. He says that Farad, that's the name of the founder of the Nation of Islam, Farad. If you ever see his picture, he doesn't look like somebody from among our community. If you ever see his picture on Nation of Islam Savior's Days, and he's standing at a podium holding a book, this is somebody that they're saying came from Pakistan under the tutelage of a sect of Islam that Carl Evans in his book, The Messenger, describes. That Farad was a common name among a sect of Islam called the Ahmadiyya sect out of Pakistan. Now, he says this: Farad spent time at the Ahmadiyya Mosque, a Ahmadiyya mosque in Pakistan. And it's a movement that is prominent in Pakistan, and it uses translations of the Quran from the Pakistani Ahmadiyya group. And the name Farad is a common surname in Pakistan, as are other names that he bestowed upon his followers, such as Shabazz. Where'd that name come? Shabazz, Ghulam, Khalaq. Remember when Malcolm X took the X from his name and he became Malcolm Shabazz. This is a name that's very much influenced from Pakistani Ahmadiyya Muslim sect. Ahmadiyyas are considered non-Muslims by many mainstream Muslims. Well, that's the same with the Nation of Islam, isn't it? Orthodox Islam, they don't recognize the Nation of Islam as actually being Islamic. These distinctions are evidently carryovers, as Evans is citing in his book, from the influence that the Ahmadiyya Muslims had on the early followers, the early leaders of the Nation of Islam, and also Moorish Science Temple, Noble Drew Ali. All right, I'm going to continue on with this. Ahmadiyyas are considered non-Muslims by many mainstream Muslims, since they consider Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. I want you to keep that name, Ahmad. I know there's Rashad Ahmad, used to be doing sports. He used to play split in for the Vikings. But Ahmad is the name of an Ahmadiyya elder from Pakistan, the founder of the Ahmadiyya movement. And he was considered by them to be the promised Mahdi, which is the Muslim version of Messiah. And the Mahdi is the promised Muslim Messiah awaited by Muslims. The Ahmadiyya sect are active translators of the Quran, Evans cites, and are proselytizers for their faith. They seem to have really poured in a lot of resources in the days and the time when Farad Muhammad appeared among Muslims in Detroit And Chicago, the rest is history. The rest is history. Back in the times of the 20s and the 30s. In our lesson tonight, we will review what we have learned about this sect through years of research and investigation, which has shown that out of this Ahmadiyya Islamic sect, the spirit of Antichrist has emerged under the title Maitreya. The Maitreya spirit is in reality the spirit of Nimrod, the Antichrist, which has emerged from the bottomless pit in the Himalayas, Tibetan region, which some call Shambhala, some call it Shangri-La or Agartha, etc. In our scripture text tonight in Daniel 11:38, this entity is called in ancient Hebrew Allah Mauzim, Allah of forces, or as in your KJVs, the God of forces. Unfortunately, many Israelites will succumb to this Allah Mauzim and have already succumbed to it in the Nation of Islam and Moorish Science Temple and the 5%ers. I can go on, you know, these particular groups. Malachi Z. York, some of you don't remember him, all right? Unfortunately, many Israelites will even in the future succumb to this entity called in Daniel in ancient Hebrew, Allah Mauzim. Yeah, in Daniel, the name Allah is actually in the ancient Hebrew of Daniel. It's there. They've camouflaged it where you can't see that in the KJV, but in other versions, they'll try to put vowel signs around it so you would think it's a loa, but you take them vowel signs off, it's just straight up Allah. And even in chapter 2 of Daniel, which is all in Aramaic, the name Allah pops up in there too, because it's a general term, just meaning, you know, the Almighty. But in this regard, Allah Mauzim, now you're zeroing in on a very specific meaning for the Allah. Allah Mauzim, the Allah of forces, as it's translated. Now, many Israelites will eventually succumb to this Allah Mauzim when a remnant of us will be in the land of Israel at the time of the end. A false shepherd ruler among us will emerge, who is called the willful king in Daniel 11:36, who will exalt himself as God. As stated in verse 36, and the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every God, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, the Elohim, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done. Currently, the spiritual teachings of Ahmadiyya Muslims is in the teachings of the Nation of Islam. And they promote Farad Muhammad as Allah in the flesh. Now, so that already now there are among us those men who claim to be God, just like this willful king declares of himself in the future, as reported in Daniel 11:36. And I know some of us, we know some local elders among Israelites who claim they're God. They do. They really do. But they can dress and like Israelites and be saying we're Hebrews, but they think they're God. I've heard them tell me this. Some of you have too. I'm not going to call some of their names because I hope that maybe we can pray for them and they can come out of that madness. But you know, I think somebody held up a poster of one of them the other day just to show who we're talking about. We won't put that brother on the prayer list because we know him. We love him. We don't hate him, but he's confused. Anyway, also in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4, it states regarding this coming false shepherd. It states, verse 4, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called. Now I'm using the word God, but you know I mean Elohim. All right. He opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worship, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Currently, the influence of this Antichrist spirit is strong among Hebrews through the Nation of Islam and more Science Temple among us. Now, if you notice, Nation of Islam, more Science Temple, their religion is Islam, but they acknowledge they are Hebrew Israelites. They acknowledge that. How many times you heard Farrakhan say that? They acknowledge they are Israelites, but then why are they clutching to Allah Mauzim? Why? Under the guise of Farad Muhammad, huh? Who they say vanished, disappeared, fell off the world, can't find them. Somewhere around 1934, 1935. There's all kind of rumors and legends about that. Muhammad Ali's wife, she lives not too far from me, his former wife. And even she says she met him under the guise of some other elder she met right after she had divorced Ali. All right, now, people keep saying there are these sightings all over the place, around the world. But we notice it seems like these sightings tend to draw closer around where Israelites are. Some of our greatest leaders have come out of the Nation of Islam, such as Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm Shabazz, or Malcolm X, Farrakhan, and yes, even my homeboy, Muhammad Ali. The Louisville Lip, as they call it. All right, now, there will be someone among Israelites who will emerge as a king among us one day. And I'm not talking about Yeshua, but there will be a false shepherd as described in Zechariah chapter 11, verse 15, 16, and 17, which state, and Yah said unto me, take unto thee yet the instruments of a foolish shepherd. For lo, I will rise up a shepherd in the land, which shall not visit those that be cut off, neither seek the young one, nor heal that is broken, nor feed that standeth still, but he shall eat the flesh of the fat and tear their claws in pieces. Woe to the idle shepherd that leaveth the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm and upon his right eye. His arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened. Also in Revelation 13:11, it further describes this false shepherd as the second beast, which states, Revelation 13:11, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the land, or the earth, the land. And he had two horns like a lamb, but he spake as a dragon. Notice this false shepherd in both Zechariah 11:16 and Revelation 13:11 is described as coming out of the land of Israel. That's what it's talking about. He comes out of the land of Israel. Not Cleveland. We're not talking about that land where LeBron James is from, but you can get the clarification of what land it's talking about in Revelation 13, verse 11, by simply going to Zechariah chapter 11, verse 15 through 17, where it too talks about a false shepherd rising up in the land. And when Zechariah was saying this, he's talking about the land of Israel. So you just take that same application and apply it here to Revelation 13:11, and you're talking about the same entity, the second beast. Now notice, this false shepherd in both Zechariah 11:16 and Revelation 13:11 is described as coming up out of the land of Israel. And in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4, this false shepherd is shown to be a defiler of the temple of Yah. And he enters into the temple and declares himself to be God, to be Elohim. And this is what it says in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. Also in Daniel 11, verse 37, this leader is shown to be an Israelite who will forsake the worship of Yah Elohim of his fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as stated. All right. Neither shall he regard the Elohim of his father, Daniel 11:37, which is implying he will forsake the worship of Yah Elohim of his fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So we're talking about a real Israelite here. We're not talking about a convert or a wannabe or an imposter. We're talking about a real Israelite. And it's not as far-fetched as you might think when you see brothers walking around here saying they God already. Farrakhan says he's God. I mean, you can go on and listen to all of them saying that. There's a lot of guys saying it. In fact, one guy told me, we created things. And it's amazing. They keep coming up with this spirit. We got to call this out. What is with this? But we notice here again in chapter 11, verse 37 of Daniel, neither shall he regard the Elohim of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any Elohim, for he shall magnify himself above all. Notice it says he does not regard the desire of women. And this is a reference to Yeshua the Messiah, because the desire Israelite women, as shown in the case of Mary, was to be honored as the mother of the Messiah from the house of David. This would then mean that this false shepherd will not be from the house of David. This will be an Israelite who will not be from the lineage of the house of David. He'll be an Israelite, but he's not from the tribe of Judah, house of David. Nor will he won't be from the house of David, nor from the tribe of Judah. But he will be from another Israelite tribe, because he will not regard the house of David as the true lineage of the kings of Israel. Jacob, our father, said a serpent ruler would emerge from the tribe of Dan in Genesis chapter 49, verse 16 through 18. And it states in Genesis 49, chapter 16 through 18, He says, Dan shall judge his people, that is, rule his people. A judge in those times meant he's a ruler as well as a manager of the criminal justice system. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. So this is a judge from the tribe of Dan that's going to be a ruler over Israel. What is Jacob telling us? He's giving us a prophecy that Daniel seized on in Daniel 11. He says this in verse 17, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path, that biteth the horse heel, so that his rider shall fall backward. I have waited for thy salvation, O God. So this serpent ruler from Dan is described in Revelation 13:11 as being like a dragon. All right, that's where he says in verse 11, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. This all means that this false shepherd, this serpent ruler that will emerge among Israelites, is an agent and a mouthpiece of Hashatan. And he is called the false prophet, whom unclean spirits, demons of deception, come out of his mouth to deceive people with false signs and wonders, as described in Revelation chapter 16, verse 13 through 14, which state, and I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of demons working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of Elohim El Shaddai, Elohim Almighty. So this Israelite false prophet king will be a Danite who will rise in the land of Israel. This is why the tribe of Dan is not listed in the 144,000 sealed Israelites in Revelation 7. You ever wondered about why Dan's not listed? Also, according to Daniel 11:38-39, it states, but in his estate, or in the seat of his government, that's what it means by estate. In his estate, in the seat of his government, shall he honor Allah Mauzim, the God of forces. So that means if he's honoring Allah Mauzim, that means Allah Mauzim is not simply an image or an idol. It's actually an entity, a being who is present at the time of this serpent Danite king. So he's honoring the Allah Mauzim, and it says in verse 38, a God whom his fathers knew not, shall he honor with gold and silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. That means if you subscribe to what he's promoting, he will give you fringe benefits like land or property and other benefits. Now, these two verses in Daniel 11, verses 38 and 39, explain how, though this Danite king exalts himself over all gods, there is one God that he honors. And this one God that he honors is called Allah Mauzim, or the God of forces in English, and in ancient Hebrew is called Allah Mauzim, meaning the God of fortresses or defenses. Allah Mauzim, I'm just going to cut to the chase. Allah Mauzim is Nimrod, the Syrian beast, who currently, yes, he's currently moving throughout the world in the midst of Ahmadiyya Islam. We have tracked where the Antichrist is. He's moving through Ahmadiyya Islam. You got to understand this. I know this is new and hard and maybe sounding very strange, but Allah Muazzin. And look at where he's chosen to send and dispatch his message among Hebrews in our major urban areas in America through groups like the Nation of Islam. See, we got to really look beyond just their bean pies. We got to look beyond just the Final Call newspapers. We got to look beyond the nice way they dress and look at these are people that have fallen for Allah Ma'uzim without even realizing, who is really nothing but the manifestation of Nimrod. You see, Nimrod is a disembodied being. Even in the time of Yachanan, it said he was already in the world. In the book of 1 John, he said, you have heard of anti-Messiah will come, even now. Many are in the world, that is, of that spirit. Also the spirit of Antichrist. He says in chapter 4, 1 John, it's in the world now. So he was saying that 2,000 years ago. So this is a roaming spirit, a demon. This is an entity. Allah Ma'uzim. And Allah Ma'uzim, who currently is moving throughout the world in the midst of Ahmadiyya Islam as the spirit of Antichrist. And it's called by Buddhists because Ahmadiyya Islam from Pakistan, which is on the regions of the Himalayas, it is one of the few sects of Islam, it's the only sect of Islam that has actually merged some of the teachings of Buddhism mixed in with Islam. That's why many Muslims do not recognize Ahmadiyya Muslims. Also, Ahmadiyya Muslims do human sacrifices. They've been known to do that. They've been known to do that. And they are engaged in some horrendous witchcraft. I don't have time to go into as much detail about this. All right. Now, this Allah Ma'uzim spirit has infiltrated the Nation of Islam and Moorish Science Temple, but also it has infiltrated Ben Ami and his followers in Dimona, Israel. They're also soaking that in. Yes. I mean, they have some nice restaurants here on 75th Street and on 159th Street. They have good food. But we need to be careful not to get too cozy with people that got that spirit on them, because my grandfather used to have a saying. He used to say, well, boy, you play with manure long enough, you're going to start smelling like it. So if you're going to start playing around, getting too cozy with people of unclean spirits, you're going to get some of the smell of them unclean spirits influences on you. We need to be careful about that. As friendly and nice as many Muslims are, and there's no hate against them, don't get me wrong. They're Israelites. They're just lost and confused, like all of us been. So they're no wicked. And I'm not saying this in hatred towards any of these people, but I'm just calling it out for what it is. We have to spiritually discern these spirits. That's what it says in 1 John chapter 4. All right. Now, so this spirit is among Israelites and demonic because they'll read both the Bible and the Quran. They'll read both. I know for a fact because I knew the leaders. Most of them are dead now. The original leaders that led them into demonic, most of them were from here, from Chicago. All right. So many of the princes of these groups are based out of Chicago. And among other Israelite people and groups internationally, as I speak, among a particular group of people from the region of eastern Syria and northern Iraq is a people group called the Yazidi. Now, this is another strange little sect of Islam, the Yazidi. There's a lot of them here in Chicago. I don't know why Chicago has become like a hotbed. I imagine they're in other cities too, but they really seem to be making a lot of inroads around our community. And that's portents of things to come. And we need to be aware of this. Now, the Yazidi are people that live in the ancient Assyrian Empire region that was formerly the land of Nimrod. And they acknowledge Hashatan straight up. And we need to understand it. While at the same time, they're claiming they're Muslim. I got this again from Wikipedia. This is what Wikipedia says about the Yazidis. Yazidis believe that Tawasi Melik, the leader of the archangels, is a good and benevolent angel who is entrusted with caring for the world after passing a test and creating the cosmos from a cosmic egg. Now you know where we're headed. Cosmic egg. Easter bunny, laying an egg. The mythology around Semiramis, the first queen of Babylon. Nimrod's mother-wife, incestuous relationship. They claim that her image is the Statue of Liberty there in New York. That's her image right there, Statue of Liberty in New York. Now, if you know the mythology, she claims she hatched from an egg that was wrapped around by a serpent. And that serpent cracked the egg where she could jump out somewhere around the Euphrates River. So you see all these doctrines of demons from those regions, like the Yazidi. They believe that Tawasi Malik is not a source of evil or wickedness. However, some antagonistic Muslims and Christians have described Tawasi Malik as a fallen angel or Satan and have repeatedly called Yazidis devil worshippers. Now, so in their area today of the Yazidis, their area is in the regions of the old Assyrian Empire. During the time when ISIS arose, ISIS killed a lot of Yazidis because they said they were devil worshippers. I don't know if any of y'all remember that. When ISIS emerged in that region around 2014, they killed a lot of Yazidis. And guess what? Guess where all the Yazidis came? When they were fleeing, they got safe passage to move to Chicago. And this is the largest population of Yazidi outside of the Middle East is here in Chicago. What's going on here? There's a concentration of this spirit. All right, so in this area today, where the Yazidis come from, which is in the regions of northern Iraq and eastern Syria, which comprised the old boundaries of the Assyrian Empire that Nimrod established. And in the midst of that region is a city called Mosul, which is where the ruins of ancient Nineveh, the capital of ancient Assyria, is located. That was established. Genesis 10 tells us that Nimrod left Babylon and moved up. His name was called Ashur, the Assyrian. And he moved up the Euphrates to the area of the Tigris in eastern Syria and northern Iraq and set up Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire. So it was in that region, even now, right now, in that region that I'm just describing to you, where the Yazidi come out of. The U.S. Army has 3 military bases right there. There are 3 U.S. military bases right there. Now, we have a Desert Storm veteran here with us today, Brother Michael. He might know a little more about that than I do. He's a veteran from the wars over there. All right. Now, in that area of the old Assyrian Empire, the U.S., the United States, has 3 military bases there. 3 of our precious young people were killed in that region from a skirmish with Shia militia from Iraq a few months ago. It's very sad. I see their pictures, 2 young ladies and 1 young man. And it just really, it just breaks my heart. And I'm not just saying that because Memorial Day was yesterday, but it's just sad to see young people just killed like that. They're just minding their own business, trying to make plans for their future and just want to keep their parents in prayer. But the U.S. has 3 military bases in that region. The Yazidi were part of the old ancient Assyrian people. They worship the devil. Now, when I met some Yazidi, there's a lot of them that live out in the suburb of St. Charles. I've seen them and talked to some of them. They're nice people. I don't hate them, but hey, when I ask them about what their religion is about, they don't want to tell me. They don't want to tell me because I try to ask them, but they won't tell me. When I would run into them at St. Charles, there's a large number of them at St. Charles, Illinois, for some reason. I don't know why. What's drawing them there? Something to think about. So, the U.S. military has 3 bases in that area. And from those bases, they were used to shoot down Iranian missiles on April the 14th that were headed towards Israel. That time when the Iranians were retaliating for Israel having bombed their embassy in Damascus. And then the Iranians fired their missiles towards Israel. And the U.S. bases had a missile defense shield that they put up and knocked down a large number of those missiles from out of the regions of the old Assyrian Empire. That's something to think about. Why is America keeping a dominion in that region? I know they say, well, it's to fight ISIS. Oh, yeah? Or is it another reason? Are they there for the reasons of Allah Mauzim, the god of fortresses, or the god of missile defense shields? Something to think about. So the term Allah Mauzim, which means god of fortresses or god of war defenses, was clearly being demonstrated in the land of Nimrod's Assyrian domain, where America shielded Israel from incoming missiles from Iran, from its missile defense system in the Assyrian regions of Nimrod. The false prophet king in Daniel 11 will support and promote the Antichrist beast as the god Allah Mauzim, who will protect him from neighboring enemies in the time of the end. Yesterday, on the border of Gaza and Egypt, an altercation took place between Israelis and Egyptian forces. And one Egyptian soldier was killed. We have not heard much on the mainstream news about this. There's a lot on the internet about it, though, on YouTube about it and other social media platforms. Mainstream, well, we know who controls mainstream news. Something they don't want you to know about unless you want to know how to look and research and look it up. Now, according to Daniel 11:40, it states that at the time of the end, Egypt will eventually try to invade Israel. I don't quite see that happening as a result of this particular incident, but as we love to say, it bears watching. Because during the time in the future when the false prophet Dieity in Israel emerges, just as described in Zechariah 11, just as described in Revelation 13:11. In those times, the Assyrian beast ruler Nimrod, who is called Allah Mauzim, and also called King of the North, will rise up against Egypt to protect the Danite king in Israel, as stated in verse 40 of Daniel 11. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him. That's the king of Egypt. And the king of the north shall come against him. That's Allah Mauzim. The king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind with chariots. And by the way, the word chariots is from the Hebrew word rakavet. And in modern Hebrew, that just means any kind of moving machine. It could be like a train or a car, rakavet. With many rakavet and with horsemen. And of course, we measure the power of these mechanized transportation machines by what they call horsepower to this day. Also, and with many ships, aircraft carriers, and destroyers. And he shall enter into the countries. That is the beast, the Antichrist, whom the Danite king honors. And in fact, the Danite king will make an image of that beast and declare that all should worship it and take the number of its name. Well, don't have time to go too far there, but just throwing that out for further reference. Now, he, that is this Allah Mauzim, he shall enter into the country. And the countries here he's talking about is the Middle East. And he shall overflow and pass over. Now, these events will happen during the time in the future when Israelites will be in the land of Israel. I guess in many Israelites' breakdown of the last days, we have different opinions about when we are going to be back in the actual land of Israel. And some have different timing for that. However, for this event to happen, there will have to be some Israelites over there in the land of Israel. And they have to be in a place where the king of the south is coming up to invade them. And the king of the south is the king of Egypt, or the country of Egypt. The current prime minister of Egypt, he's such a weak leader right now. And the news reports are that the populace in Egypt are so upset that the Israelis killed one of their soldiers, and they were already upset with what's going on in Gaza and at Rafah, where just 45 people just killed yesterday. And that border and that boundary between Egypt and Gaza, that what we hear from reports is that these were some Egyptian soldiers that went rogue and just outright on their own started shooting at Israeli soldiers. So that tell you right there, so people are starting to get kamikaze a little bit now over there. So there could be a big change of leadership because Egypt is bankrupt and it depends on a lot of subsidies from Europe and America. It's bankrupt. And that government is, the prime minister, he's so subservient to the West because he can't afford not to be. But the populace in Egypt are saying, we're not going to stand for this. So you can already see there's a momentum in Egypt to already start moving up into the land of Israel through the Gaza Strip. That's already started. Now, how long it will be before this event happens in Daniel? Well, it bears watching. That's all we can say right now. Now, these events will be under a false Danite ruler who will lead Israelites to have faith and allow Mauzim, the Antichrist, rather than in Yeshua. Our Master Yeshua said to his Israelite Nazarene people to beware of false messiahs and false prophets in the time of the end. As he stated in Matthew chapter 24, verse 24 through 25. Quote, for there shall arise false messiahs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. They shall deceive the very chosen ones. You the chosen ones that he's talking about. And then our master says in verse 25, behold, I've told you before. I've told you before. Now, I've shared with you from scripture and some news of this event, but I want to wrap this lesson up tonight with my own personal testimony. Because the way the Ruach has been dealing with me since 1982, I have had experiences having lived in Africa, traveled through Egypt, Israel. I've been in war zones in these areas. I've been in Israel where I'm in one side with the Palestinians and Israelis are shooting down from top of buildings down to the people I'm with. Then I've been in other circumstances where Palestinians are attacking me because they think I'm with them. I've been attacked in Israel before by Palestinians, and I've been shot at by Israelis. So I've been through a lot over there, going over there. But at the same time, the fact of the matter is the Ruach has been working on me in regards to understanding these things since 1982. One night, and my wife can testify and bear me witness, in 1982, while living in Atlanta, I had a frightening dream and vision that I saw as portents of things to come for our people. I was sleeping in my living room on the sofa. TV was off, so I wasn't just dreaming something that was on TV while I was asleep. And I woke up in the dream. I don't know whether it's a dream or vision, and I saw a casket in my living room. And I could not understand why I saw a casket. Other than that, it represented that it was something like what has been characterized in certain vampire horror movies of a vampire, which is a living dead man. And that's really what the Antichrist is. He's literally a living dead man. Nimrod. And as you know, in those fiction accounts of the vampire, he's dead in the day, but he comes back to life at night. Where do you think those legends come from? If you know your history, you know that in Transylvania and the regions of Hungary, there was an order called the Order of the Dragon for those nobility in Hungary and Transylvania, Romania. They were called the Court of the Dragon. And they believed they were people identified with Satan. All right, now, this is where you get the legend of Dracula. He comes out of Transylvania. Well, that's all hype from a novel that Abraham Stoker wrote, but at the same time, that story is based around the Court of the Dragon because there was a member of the Court of the Dragon during the time when the Turks in 1453 had taken over what is now today called Turkey. In the Court of the Dragon from a province in Romania called Transylvania was a young prince called a wicked name because he was so evil. And it's a historical person. His name was called Vlad the Impaler, and he was a member of the Court of the Dragon. His father was. And he was so wicked that they gave him a nickname, and his nickname was Dracula, meaning son of the dragon. And we just know him as the vampire legend, Dracula. But this was a historical person. They understood that they were the servants of the dragon. Now, I don't have time to go into that, but when I saw that casket in my living room, it looked like a Dracula casket. But it looked like he wasn't there. It was night. But in that casket, there was a book. I saw it. And it was a sealed book. And when I picked it up and I broke open the seals to look into it, I saw some words in it, 1982, that I still remember to this day. And this is what it said of what I read. And as I was reading it, I saw fallen stars coming down from heaven, of beams, of star-like beams. And it said in the book, it says, we were the children of the dawn before the foundation of the world. And we have come to establish a king. And that in big bold print. Now, I had no idea what that was or what that meant. But 2 weeks later, I was in a bookstore and there was some books about the United Nations in New York that set up to facilitate the emergence of a king or a ruler. People do not understand. When you see the United Nations logo, you'll see that there is a crown, the leaf crown worn by emperors around the globe. Have you ever noticed the logo of the United Nations? It's got that kind of crown that Caesars would wear. There's a name for it. It doesn't come to my mind now. Okay, so the United Nations was set up initially for the emergence of a ruler. There's a book store that was in the plaza of the United Nations. It was called, when it was initially built, it was called initially Lucifer's bookstore. They changed the name because of the controversy of that name. They called it Lucius Trust. And they had books. And I went to the UN. I went there in New York, and there were books in there like telling how a ruler named Maitreya would come. And then after I had that dream, I saw a book that said it just like I saw in that casket. It says, and we have come to raise up a king, exactly as I saw in the book that I saw in my dream. And I saw it in that bookstore. Now, I'm here to say that then means that the dream I had was not a coincidence or a result of eating something that late, because it's in a regular book written that way that I saw in the bookstore. Furthermore, now this is the part that's scary, and please thank you for your patience to bear with me on this. But there was a second part to this dream that I had. There was a second part. Whether you call it a dream or vision, I can't say. But already, when I saw the book, I could see that this was some sort of vision or dream God had sent me to see. All right. Now, about a week after I saw that dream, on all of the major newspapers in 1982, from New York Times, LA Times, the Tribune in Chicago, Sun Times, there were full-page ads saying the Maitreya has come. The Christ has come. And they called this entity Maitreya, which is the Buddhist term for Messiah. All right. Now, I had never heard of any of those things before. I had no idea what that was. But in the second part of the vision and dream I had been arrested, and I was in a room where I saw some horrendous things. I don't have time to go into all the details, but I can say this. I was arrested, and I was in a room, and I saw out my window that they were grabbing Israelite people all over America, taking you to concentration camps. I saw that. And if what I saw from the book in that casket, I later saw in reality, I'm convinced that's what's ultimately coming to America for you and me. We'll have to leave at that time or else be swept up. But what got me in the dream was I saw soldiers there at the door. They were dressed up like SS soldiers, like Germans, like Nazi SS soldiers. And these were the ones carrying away Israelites in the cities. And there was somebody that came through the door. He was dressed in full military gear and fatigues. And he was cold-blooded. And he looked like a dark Pakistani man. Some of them can get kind of dark, but he was dressed like in a Nazi uniform. And he was cold. He could talk to you without talking to you. He could just look at you. And that's the one whom I believe I saw as a manifestation of the Antichrist, Nimrod. Nimrod was a Cushite from Asia. He wasn't from Africa. And in those regions of India and Pakistan, there are the Kush Mountains and the Ganges Kush River. So there were some Eastern Kushites, not just Western Kushites in Africa. There's Eastern Kushites. And I saw that, and I began to, I've since come to believe that was Nimrod who I saw. That was the beast. They're coming for us. Now, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to show a video. And this is kind of a haunting video because 6 years after that vision, I was living in Kenya. I was living in the Nairobi area, and this was June of 1988. And I was living and working in Nairobi. And in June of 1988, there was a Kenyan woman who called herself an evangelist in one of the shanty towns on the outskirts of town named Mary Akatasa. And Mary Akatasa claimed to be performing miracles. And many of the people in that region were so destitute with sicknesses and illnesses and all kind of mental health struggles and problems. And they would come to her meetings and they said she would heal them. And it became so big that Muslims even started coming there, and Hindus. There's a lot of Hindu people there. But also in Nairobi, one of the largest Ahmadiyya Islamic mosques is in Nairobi. In Nairobi. And it's a large Pakistani population that lives in Nairobi. So some of them were coming to her meetings and getting healed. And this was a sister, Mary Akatas, is from a Hebrew tribe in Kenya called the Luhya. Many of you have Luhya ancestors. You can be sure of that as Israelite. So this is an Israelite woman by ancestry, because that's what the Luhya are, the Bantus. So she was very popular. And on the date in June, she said, there's going to be a visitor coming to us tomorrow, a special guest. And this leaked out throughout the world, and international news services were present the next day, from CNN, from all of the major world news services and papers. They were all there to see what was going to happen that day. And, well, what happened the next day? The people were singing and praising and worshiping. And then she said to everybody, look up. And there was some sort of bright orb in the sky. A lot of my friends want me to go with them to that, my Kenyan family. But I said, no, I'm not going to that place. And a lot of them were there and they bear me witness. And when they saw this orb in the sky, everybody was looking up. Then when they looked back at her, there was a guy dressed in white who said he was the Messiah. All right. What I later found out was that this guy was connected with the Ahmadiyya Muslim, the same people that have been working with the Nation of Islam Foundation. Yeah. Okay. And well, when I saw the news report about this, he claimed he was Jesus. Now I've got a video of it. It's only 7 minutes long. I'm going to show you the video of what happened that day. You can see it for yourself rather than just hear me recount about it, what I saw and heard. Stand by. This video is called Maitreya is the Devil. But Maitreya, I don't think is the devil. He's Nimrod, the devil's servant. Stand by. You get ready to see him.
The last stop on our journey is Kenya. Here too there are said to be healing waters, but we have come to visit an unusual woman who is well known throughout the country and venerated by many people. Mary Sinaida Akatsa. She is a person full of faith and a powerful joy of life which she passes on to many people. Members of the church she founded wear white and blue gowns. Mary Akatsa says that Jesus himself gave her these colors as a sign, in order that one could identify oneself as a child of God under one faith. Untiringly, this simple woman travels through the country to the people, most of whom live in poverty. Wherever she arrives, she is immediately surrounded by crowds. Like many other third world countries, Kenya suffers from unemployment, crime, drug abuse and prostitution. Mary Akatsa knows the people's sorrows and goes on undeterred, giving comfort and help. Because of her compassion, people lovingly and respectfully call her Mommy. Three times a week, she gives healing ceremonies in Kawangware, a slum in Nairobi, with prayers, songs, and preaching. Here, on June the 11th, 1988, an extraordinary event took place, which many newspapers and the TV station CNN reported. The people believed that Jesus Christ had personally appeared before them. A journalist from the magazine Kenya Times was an eyewitness. His report starts a week before the event.
On Saturday, June the 4th, 1988, a big bright star was sighted above the skies by worshippers.
While we were filming, the unusually bright star could also be seen during the day. During the healing session on June the 11th, 1988, the mysterious event took place, which was observed by hundreds of people. Many were left totally healed. Only a few photos exist.
That's Allah Mauzim. That's him. That's the emergence of Nimrod right there. Continuing on.
The tall figure of a barefooted, white-robed and bearded man appeared from nowhere and stood in the middle of the crowd.
Watu wote walianguka chini, wakajawa wengine na furaha, wengine wakajawa na kilio kwa maana wameona kila hawajaona tangu wazaliwe.
When he appeared, people had no idea what was happening. Many of them fell down. Others began to cry and repent their sins, and continued to do so even after Jesus had disappeared, and we had begun singing new healing songs again. Since that day, hordes of people have been coming to Kawangware, repenting their sins and being healed and saved. But it is not me who heals, it is the power of God that heals through me.
It appeared to them the Son of Man had at last fulfilled his promise of coming back to earth.
The unknown person who didn't tell his name turned first to Mary Akatsa. He said, "You are an important messenger of God. Keep on preaching, never retreat. Whoever places obstacles in your path will himself be halted. Then the man spoke in Swahili without an accent to the crowd.
We are nearing the time for the rain of heaven. But before that, I shall come back and bring a bucketful of blessing for all of you.
Before he disappeared as suddenly as he had come, he paced off a path in the direction of the church.
Siku hiyo wakati mwenyewe aliingia, alisema nimeweka msalaba hapa.
Jesus said, I have put my garment here at the end of this path, and whoever comes to this place, perhaps with sickness or demons or other problems, should run along this path. When he returns at the end and runs back to Mary, all his problems will vanish, and he will be free.
Sasa wanakuwa free.
Look at that Sikh, the Kalasinga, as they say in Kenya. That's a Sikh. Even he's there.
Since that day, God speaks to me. I can hear him through my ears, like somebody talking next to me. It is very loud. Before my eyes, there appears a sort of screen, and I am told, look there, or there. There is someone in the congregation. Look at him. The message is written on his chest. I can then read all the problems this person has and where they stem from. Then I ask for him to be saved, and he is healed. I get the message directly from God.
All right, so this site says that was Satan. Yet I know for a fact who it was, because we had a supernatural event that we were engaged in Kenya, in a town called Matu, in the area of what is called Yatta, which is moving in the direction of Somalia. And one day, I went to speak at a school, a boarding school in Matu, to children from all across the country of Kenya that were boarding there. And there was a young lady I didn't know then, but she was the niece of Mary Akatasa, the evangelist woman you saw. And I noticed as soon as I came there, and I had other Kenyan pastors with me and my friends, and we were going to have an all-day program. And as we came into the school, Mary Akatasa's niece saw us. And she started speaking in a weird way. And we realized she was demon possessed. So we said, we're going to have to cast this demon out of her. So we prayed in the name of Yesu. That's the Swahili word for Yeshua, is Yesu. And so we prayed, katika jina la Yesu, come out of her. Ndoka, remove from here. But every time we said in the name of Yeshua, or Yesu in Swahili, the demon in her would come back saying, praise Yesu, praise Yesu. So me and the elders there, we got together. I said, something's not right here. This demon, every time we seek to cast it out in the name of Yesu, the demon just keeps saying, praise Yesu. And by this time, this young lady was smelling like vomit and one of the worst sickening smells you could think of. I'm not exaggerating. And so one of the pastors told me, he said, did y'all notice something on her chest? There's a picture of that entity that appeared at her aunt's meeting in Nairobi. And sure enough, there it was, her aunt standing beside that white robe figure you saw in that video. That picture was on her chest. And so every time we were trying to cast the demon out of the girl, the demon, we would say, we cast you out in the name of Jesus. The demon would say, praise Jesus. But then we realized we had to distinguish which Jesus we were talking about. Because the demons that were the demonic entity that appeared in Nairobi was claiming it was Jesus, as you saw in this video. So we decided, we said, this is what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to pray in the name of Jesus that distinguish which Jesus we're talking about. So I prayed and I said, in the name of Jesus, who sits at the right hand of the Father in heaven, come out of her. And the demon came out of her. And she was set free. And the young ladies, students that were there, they came and tore that picture off her chest. And this young lady came to her senses. And she said she would never go back to any meetings that our aunt had with that Jesus, as she said it then. And she came into her right mind. And we went on and had an effective outreach that day. So with that said, this is where we are. And this is what the scriptures say will happen in the last days, in the time of the end.